I think the only thing I don't like about like kind of as you get into the more like conservative side of it is like they try to define what success looks like, right? Like I think the hardest thing is like at least in school what I struggle with, people would tell me what like success would look like, but if I disagreed, I was inherently wrong, right?
Yes.
And so like, if I didn't want to do the subject or I wouldn't perform like English, I could not like you could not convince me. The Scarlet Letter, I remember reading that book in like 11th grade in our lit class. You could not convince me that that book fucking mattered, right? You literally could not talk to me. But like I was convinced that I was wrong because I didn't care. And so I don't like people who have a set of parameters on like where you should be marching, right? And so I think that's the only thing I ever push back with Jordan Peterson. Like, but again, his actions are good, but to what end? And I think the hardest thing to answer is what is your end, right? And
Yes.
then so, like I don't think I have obviously lots of friends that are guys, like pretty much all, especially playing football. Like that's pretty much all I've ever hung out with,
Right.
right? There is girls football, and so but like all my friends who are succeeding now or succeeded before, they answer that question for themselves. And when I've struggled, when my friends have struggled, they either had somebody else answering that question or they just couldn't answer the question themselves, right? And so like how do you balance, right? Someone who's like, for example, a kid who comes up to you and he's 20 and he's like, all I want to do is get more girls, right? Like, do we tell him that that's a a a, a mindless chase? Like, should we tell him that that's not worthwhile if the things that he's doing to create that are ultimately good things to fall back on as that evolves? And I think that's the hardest question for me to answer. Is like it's kind of like the Harry Potter quest, right? Like the Harry Potter art. Like bad wizards go to Hogwarts, right? But they still train them in the same way. And so like that's the question I have for you guys. And also the question that I don't see is if someone disagrees with how to implement the things that you teach, you work through and do, are you going to have the same are you going to want to chase the problem in the same vigorous way? And I think this is the only question that I struggle to answer. And then the question I'm asking you guys is you guys kind of step onto this venture.
I would say that when I when I think about that, I hear a lot of you're seeking people's advice and then you're looking for you're looking for answers to this question
Yeah.
about what is success. When I think the real way to do that is to offer somebody good questions that they have to turn around and answer for themselves.
Yeah.
The question of what does success look like to you or what does happiness look like to you is the wrong question because it's too big.
Yeah.
Do you want to have a family? Do you want to, is it more important for you to make $1 million or is it more important do you have a career that you can pay your bills and have, provide for your lifestyle? By
Yeah.
providing the right questions, people can get to their own answer easily enough. So whether it's like the analogy of going to Hogwarts, where all the good wizards and the bad wizards, they're all going to get the same baseline training. I think if you look at it in the form of questions that you have to turn around and answer yourself, you can essentially get the same type of training all throughout, but everyone's answers are going to be more tailored to their specific wants, their needs, or their desires, and that'll help them build that overall picture of what they see as success in life as time
Yeah.
goes on. And of course, a lot of that has to do with we don't know what we don't know. And as somebody thinks that, okay, maybe I want to do this in life, and then you start to make the move to pursue that path, and all of a sudden you find out you're not really digging this, it's much easier to step back and adjust course and then go a different way because you're not going full bore into doing this thing, that thing, this thing, and this thing that everybody needs to do before you realize that really you've just been spinning your wheels this whole time, wasting time, and you're could have been more productive if you were focused on a different path.
Yeah. And I don't know if there is a right answer. I like your answer way better than my initial thought. But I think that's again the only thing with what exists now that I even have a frustration with, right? So I don't even have a good like response. I just wrote it down so I can think about it longer. But like that is a weakness that I feel in what you guys want to do is like if somebody comes to you but they disagree with what right looks like at the end of it, I find that's where the most conflict is. Where, bring it back to America, I feel like when we started America, we were agreeing on less in order to get along, and now there's so many things to try to agree on that it's just so hard to get along. And I think the only thing I provide to people is my bar of agreement is so low that pretty much if you, I mean, at this point, if you just don't hit children or hurt like kids or, you know, take my French fries, then like, honestly, like we're going to vibe in a great way. And so like that low bar of entry is just, it helps.
I think, I don't know exactly what, I'm going to say perception, but that word doesn't feel right. But I'm going to use that as a placeholder for now, right? I think in regards to what you just addressed, perception is a huge issue. Because I think that you're correct as far as at the founding, people did not agree on that much. There were a lot of varying opinions. There's always been a lot of varying opinions here. There's always been a lot of different people, a lot of religions, a lot of differences in people that make them view things very differently, right? At the founding, the focal point of what was required for us to become independent was very specific. These are the things that matter. It's these say 10 things, right? Let's just use the Bill of Rights as the list that they're going off of. These are the 10 things that really matter the most, and if we can all agree on these 10 things, then we can gain independence and we can fucking move forward, right?
Yep. That
list, not only of the amendments, but of what people perceive as necessary for people to live next to somebody else, has grown exponentially. Yeah. There is a huge number of people, especially in the younger generations, that don't feel like they can exist in a town or a neighborhood with somebody who doesn't believe that healthcare is a human right, or that abortion is a human right, or that, you know, you have to somebody, whatever, X, Y, or Z, whatever their opinion is.
Why don't you have a Ukrainian flag on your lawn?
That they can't stand to even live next to somebody who doesn't agree with them on various political aspects. When the person who lives next to them, if you live next to me, right, if that's who you are and you live next to me, I don't care what you think. I want you to leave me alone so that I can do what I want to do. And as long as we're not fucking with each other, I'm not going to care at all. So that open hostility toward me not agreeing with you is met with, like you said, such a lax level of caring that it's just focused on just fucking leave me alone. That's all that is just, I want to do the thing that feels correct and appropriate to me, and I will not interfere with your life at all.
Exactly.
Because that, and I'm not using me as like the moral cornerstone, I just mean that viewpoint, because that viewpoint is not the base for the majority of America. That's a huge problem. When we started to care deeply about the harmless conduct that our neighbors had inside of their house, we reached a real bad tipping point, in my opinion. You know, if your neighbor, like you said, if they're not hurting their kids, if they're not hurting people, if they're not breaking any generally understood moral boundaries, doesn't matter what they're doing in their house. It just doesn't matter at all. If they're not fucking with your property, if they're not doing it, it doesn't matter. And it shouldn't matter. And we shouldn't be making rules for what they can do. We shouldn't be making laws for what they can do. I shouldn't be voting on what you can do. None of those things should be happening if what you're doing in your house does not affect me in a legitimate manner. But we have so many rules, so many laws, so many regulations that interfere with what people can do in their personal lives that it has shifted, in my opinion, the generalized understanding of what is important and necessary for us to live together. Does that make sense?
Exactly. Yes, and I unequivocally agree as you continue, but go ahead. I really agree. Go ahead.
No, and I think that's it. That's been one of the things I remember saying on this show is I was very emotional for some reason. I don't remember exactly why. Brian, what up, dog? But we were talking about this show and like, we had to be talking about lies, because that's where there's like lies and truth. That's how I got into this emotional state of like, this is where I'm at. And I was talking about like, do you know, I'm going to tell you as the audience how you know that you can believe what I'm saying. And it comes from a completely selfish place that I want to be left alone. I don't want to be told what to do. I don't want anybody else to be interfering with my life. That's why I'm doing this here, and that's why you can trust that what I'm telling you is not a lie, because I want what I'm asking for you. That's what I want. And for me to have it, you have to have it. I have no choice but to give that to you if that is what I want. So that's how the only way I can put out for people that I'm not lying to you. I have no reason to lie to you, because I want exactly what I am telling you that you deserve. That is all that I want, is just that thing. So that's my baseline for the show, you know, is that's I don't want anything else, and nobody else should be. I have taken up a part of the show that we don't do so much on grab bags, but more specific days of that at the end of specifically parts 2 and 3, it's what does this have to do with freedom and liberty? What do these particular topics have to do with freedom and liberty? Because that's what this show is about. And exposing for people the ways that seemingly innocuous news stories will impact their lives, because those are the things that matters. The things that government are doing that matters the most are the things that are fucking with your life when they're telling you that it doesn't. They're telling you that it doesn't matter. It happens in the background. It's just a tax. It's just a this. It's just a city ordinance. It's just a whatever, right? Those are the things that fuck with your life the most. And if people aren't talking about them because they're just talking about the political consequences and not how you're going to be less free because of this, you're being lied to. And so that's just been the corner of the show for a while since we started doing the longer streams of like this is what we're talking about here. You know, this is what I care about. And I think it could, in a roundabout way, circles back to what you were talking about with focus and people not agreeing with the end. You know, my big driver for what I think people should do or things they should chase is like passion based, you know, and that doesn't need to be, for me, it's not a specific occupation. My passion is liberty. My passion is justice. And I know that because I can look back on my life and I can look back on being a small child, 8, 9, 10 years old and questioning things in authority that didn't make sense to me. You know, why do we have this particular rule doesn't make sense, and seeing people be treated certain ways and having that feeling inside of me that that's not right. This conduct, this interaction was not correct. It shouldn't happen like this, but there's a disparity here. There's something that I am feeling that I can't express because of however old I was, you know, and it took me. Even now, I just turned 29 years old, and I still am constantly having to remind myself that even though there are other avenues that I could go down to try and scratch that itch for justice, right? A huge thing, police work. Police work calls to me constantly. Yeah. I mean, on a near daily basis. And I have to consistently remind myself that while that is a potential pathway to justice, those things are not what they appear to be. I know that. Those systems are not what they appear to be. And the scratch of justice that I'm going to get from doing this show is going to be so exponentially greater than anything that I could ever experience being a police officer that it's not even comparable, you know. And I have to reframe that for myself, that like to be a cop would be an instantaneous way to be like, I'm doing good, I'm fucking helping people, and I'm making a positive difference. Also, you're extorting people on a daily basis. You're stealing money from people. You're putting people in a fucking cage. You're taking their rights away. These are realities of this that I don't have to face hosting this show, informing people of what their rights are.
Welcome to the salt of the streets, coming at you every week with this food for thought. Hope you ready to